Hello, welcome everybody. It's great to see such a small but perfectly formed group here. I mean, this is only an issue that affects every single living being of any kind on the planet. So, yeah, it's nice that you are all here at the forefront of thinking about this, at least, and discussing this and scratching our heads and looking at ways forward. So, yeah, thank you for coming. So first thing, just to let you know, and don't groan all at once, but there will be some audience participation here. See, this is why I knew you were the right audience as soon as I set eyes on you. So we'll be using a bit of Menti, internet permitting. So if you're familiar with Menti, it's just so we can get you to input stuff and the speakers can respond to that. So please scan the QR code or use the Menti code on your device. And yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating session here today. So we are looking at sustainable L&D and our part in the huge changes that are going to sweep through our society over the coming years. But we've got different perspectives to look at it. So the first session, which Tess Robinson from LAS will be leading, is basically looking at how do we prepare the ground for these seeds of change that we want to sow. So how do we prepare the soil? So by that, I'm sure you've all heard that the saying that culture eats strategy. I think it's fair to say culture also eats change. So in order for the seeds of change to take, we need to adapt and modify our culture. So we all know how hard culture change is. And what we're going to share with you today is a way that you can start to influence your culture from the bottom up using storytelling and using conversations as well. So that's our first session. Then we've got a nice sort of interactive piece in the middle where we're going to get you to work in groups. And then we've got Brittany Sage Brown from Kraft Heinz. So Brittany will be talking to us about some of these seeds of change and how she's sowed them within her organisation and is starting to see the positive shoots that are coming from that. So got the first half is looking at preparing the soil, and the second half is seeing these seeds and how they grow. So yeah, really wonderful session, which I've been hugely looking forward to. And I think that's everything that I needed to say. So over to Tess Robinson. You can clap if you like.
Okay, well, thank you. It's really lovely to see all of you here today. So we started talking about sustainability at Learning Technologies last year. We were unfortunate enough to have a lunchtime session and we had to compete with people's hungry bellies. So I think we had about 15 people in the room. But the kind of conversations that we were having and the kind of things that people were sharing about what they were doing in their organizations was actually really inspiring. And I went away feeling like, yes, there is a lot that L&D can do. We do have a role to play, and together we need to define that role and support each other and make sure that we're collectively doing the right thing for the environment. Now, as Rob said, we're going to be using Menti today. It's going to be a little bit of an interactive session, this first one. So we will need you to talk to each other. We might need you to move a little closer to each other as well so that you've got people that you don't know around you and you can share with them as well. So why am I standing up here in front of you? Well, I'm not a climate scientist. I wouldn't even say that I'm an expert on sustainability, because sustainability is a concept that's actually, it is quite difficult to get your head around. It's constantly evolving, it's constantly shifting, and there is a lot of complex science in there as well. But I do have some credentials. So I am the sustainability lead at LAX. We're a certified B Corporation, and for those who don't know what that is, they're corporations that reach the highest standard of social and environmental responsibility. So you may have heard of Triple P, which is profit, planet, and people. And we work to make sure that we do all of those things. And it's really wonderful, actually, to see more and more companies in our space being certified for B Corp as well. I think Learning Pool recently got their certification too, which is fantastic. I'm also certified carbon literate. I can really recommend that course if anyone's interested in doing it. I did it up in Manchester with the Better Business Network. It was really super interesting, and I learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know already about carbon and carbon literacy and the effect of various things on the planet. I was also lucky enough in March to be part of the UN Women UK delegation on the Commission on the Status of Women, which takes place in New York. And amongst other things, we discussed the intersection between gender equality and climate change as well. And together with industry colleagues, I also set up the Green L&D group. So we'll give you a QR code at the end if you'd like to join us. That would be really wonderful. And the idea of that is that we work together and we share examples of best practice and challenges so that we can all grow in our knowledge on that subject. So, this is a photograph of the first place in the world where there have been climate refugees. Where do you think it is? Anyone want to hazard a guess as to where you think that is?
North America somewhere.
Oh, you're so good, Neil.
10 points.
10 points. So when I saw this, I was actually quite surprised because we have a tendency in the West to think of climate change as a global South problem, as a problem for developing countries, and not really something that affects us too much. So this is Ile de Jean-Charles in Louisiana, where it's very low-lying land, and the rising sea level has meant that all the people that lived here have had to leave their home, and they're the first people in the world to have to do that. But they won't be the last. Climate change is it's a very big disruption. We heard that in the keynote this morning. It's literally going to change everything that we do. So it is going to change the way that we produce, the way that we consume, the way that we travel, the way that we interact with each other. It is a part of a bigger issue around sustainability. We're focusing on climate change today because sustainability as a whole is almost too big to cover in one session. Most of you will be familiar with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. These are goals that the UN has set to reach by 2030. Now, whether we are able to do that or not, I don't know, because the pandemic has certainly set things back. When I did the Commission on the Status of Women, we learnt that gender equality has been rolled back by 300 years. And previously it was 100 years before the pandemic. So you can see that there are lots of challenges around this. So my first question to you, we're going to use Menti. It is, how does climate change make you feel? And if you bear with me a minute, I just need to go into Menti. So there, if you put in some words about how climate change makes you feel. Okay, so we've got words there such as worried, concerned, overwhelmed, apprehensive, frustrated. They're all quite kind of difficult things, difficult feelings to get your head around and difficult feelings to address. Bear with me just a sec. Okay. So this is a survey that the Office for National Statistics did last year. For those who don't know who they are, they're a kind of, I'm not actually sure whether they're a government body or whether they're quasi-government, but they map trends that are happening within UK society. So this survey was about how people feel about climate change. And as you can see, almost 75% of people are worried or somewhat worried. And that translates into your organizations as well. So nearly 3/4 of your learners will have some degree of concern about the climate. So this is a survey from a company called Kite Insights. They're an organization who look at social trends as well. And they found that actually, although people are worried, they really want to be able to do something to tackle climate change. And that was key to their motivation and well-being. And they were ready to do something about it at work as well. But as you can see towards the bottom, a lot of people felt that their employers weren't actually doing enough to tackle climate change. So this is something that's really essential to people's motivation, to their well-being, and it's something that we need to address in learning in our organisations. This is another survey from WRAP. They're a climate action NGO, and they looked at customers and what they think that businesses should be doing. So as you can see from this, it's not just your internal audience who want to be doing something, who are interested in doing it, who are worried about it. It's also your customers and your service users who want to buy from businesses who are doing the right thing around climate change. And you can see as well that nearly 2/3 of people agree that businesses should do more to help them address climate change as well. And it's quite interesting the role that we have to play in business and in organisations, because we're able to be much more flexible, to move much more quickly than governments, and to have more influence than individuals as well. So I think we do have a really essential role to play. So when we're designing our learning, if we take a human-centred approach to learning, that helps us to understand that people aren't existing in the microcosm of our organisations. They're influenced by external factors, and they're influenced by their own personal factors as well, outside of their experience at work. Big things that are outside of our control can be really stressful. We saw that in the word cloud when I asked you to think about how you felt about climate change. There was a lot of words like anxious, scared, worried. And that's something that we need to take into account when we're designing our learning in-house. A really good example of a big, scary, extrinsic factor is the pandemic. We saw how that changed the way that we did things, how it affected pretty much everybody's mental health in some way, shape, or form, because we felt it was something that we didn't have any control over. So the lens with which we help our learners in our organisations look at climate change, that can be really essential to making them feel like they've got agency and they've got control, and it can improve their well-being, their mental health, and ultimately their performance at work as well. So here's my next question for you, another Menti poll. Is your organisation doing enough to address climate change? And if you bear with me again, I'll just go out and move Menti on. There you go. Oh, so there's 5 organisations in the room that are doing loads. That's absolutely brilliant. But the majority are either not doing enough or you're not really sure. And that's quite interesting. When David Attenborough joined Instagram in 2020, 2021, he described climate change as a communications problem. So part of it is being able to articulate what your organisation is doing, so that people are really well informed and they know what's going on. So yeah, that's really interesting. And to be honest, it's what we expected to see. I think most organisations are maybe either not doing enough or not communicating what they're doing well enough. So as I said before, climate change, it is a really difficult topic to get your head around. It is constantly evolving, it's constantly shifting, it's really technical sometimes. And although I read up a lot about it, I still find it really hard to follow on occasion. Part of the other problem with it is that it's existential. You know, we're talking about something that could affect our lives, could end all our lives ultimately. And that's a really difficult thing to talk about, particularly at work. So we all see the...
So I think that's reflected by however many people are at the conference that aren't in this room.
Yeah.
It's a really hard thing to look at, isn't it?
It is.
To look at in the face and to think about and to do that in a positive way. So again, I said at the front, sort of at the start, kind of jokingly, it's great to have all of you here that are doing that, but I genuinely mean that. You know, you're here and you're looking it in the face and you're thinking and you're networking and you're trying to come up with solutions. And and that's not to be undervalued at all. Sorry, Tess.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So yeah, I mean, we see the news, don't we? We see all the wildfires, the avalanches. I think the temperature in Spain at the moment is something crazy, like 38 degrees. And we don't really want to think too hard about how that's going to play out for all of us. So there is this concept of climate silence, and that's derived from a need to protect ourselves psychologically, to avoid things that are going to cause us anxiety. We saw that actually with the IPCC report that was issued in, I think it was February or March, and it lasted on the BBC homepage for maybe 5 hours, and it was way down the page, when really it should be front and centre. It should be what we're all thinking about at the moment. But there is a way to break that silence, and that's what we wanted to talk to you a little bit about today. Learning can really help people deal with the changes that are coming up. It can make people feel more in control, give them more agency. Also, if well-being isn't part of your learning portfolio as well, that might be something to consider, and to have things in there that are going to help people deal with those difficult feelings around it. So my question is, and just call out, we're a friendly group here, is why don't you think people talk more about climate change? I bet you can't probably remember the last conversation you had with your friends or your colleagues about climate change. Why is that? Why don't people talk about it?
You're worried it's polarising.
Absolutely, yeah.
A couple of gentlemen there.
Disinformation about it.
Yeah,
People don't believe it.
yeah.
Sorry, the gentleman there just behind blue.
It's really complicated.
Absolutely, yeah.
Your average person, wherever they're from, has a difficulty trying to grasp it unless they happen to be living in, southeastern United States, where it's flooded. That's actually happened more in Spain at the moment, but a lot of people there would probably put it down to it's just hot again this year. So it is a lack of information and understanding on this.
Yeah, you're right. I think the information is often very technical. It is often very difficult to get your head around. Absolutely.
I think we have Neil at the front and the lady in the back. Neil, do you want to?
I think a lot of it is it's somebody else's problem to fix, and what difference could I make in myself anyway? It's a combination of the two.
Yeah.
And the lady in the back there, right?
I'll say somewhat scary fact
Yeah.
myself is that it's not spoken about because we think it's just a fact of life now. It doesn't come
Yeah.
up in the conversation.
I think there's the lady here. Yeah.
I think it's the language. I don't think people understand climate change as a concept no more than they understand sustainability. It's not people-centered enough.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And also that the kind of definitions of these things, they change constantly. So you think you've got it, and then it changes, and you think, oh, well, maybe I didn't understand it correctly. And that puts people off talking about it because they don't want to seem like they don't know what they're talking about.
I think it's there.
There's an element of wokeism about it. And
Yeah.
There's a lot of negativity around
Yeah.
that you wouldn't want to happen.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
the gentleman in the fabulous shirt there, I must say.
Nice shirt.
I wasn't fishing for a compliment, but I would.
We've got a photograph together. I think there's always a sense of either criticism of other people and their lifestyle or self-criticism. Because I myself have flown here yesterday.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
start discussing things, and it can become very critical of other people or of yourself.
Yeah, that's right. It can be really divisive. Yeah.
And I think last one, the lady in the back.
I think that people have difficulty to relate with it. They think they cannot make an impact by themselves. For one side, and for the other side, it's something that is very far away in the future. So they are able to relate with the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all really good reasons and absolutely correct, that it's uncomfortable, it's divisive, you may feel inexpert about it, so you might not want to open yourself up to those conversations, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be having those conversations. With any major risk, we've seen that with AI and things like that in the keynote speaks, but with any major risk there comes opportunities. So we have the opportunity to enter new markets, for example, with electric cars, to improve relations with our customers, to retain staff better, particularly millennials, like the person in the keynote question said that she wanted a job that was meaningful and that was sustainable. So there are a lot of positives. We can create cleaner air, cleaner rivers. We have the opportunity to create a better world from this risk. And that is something that we should be talking about as well as the more depressing side of it. So I think as well, they nicked all my good ideas in the keynote. Modern organizations, they're characterized by constant change. We'll hear a lot at this conference about AI. That's our big technological change that's going to really transform what we're doing in our industry. Oh. Trying to break in. And as we saw with the stuff that we did with the word cloud and statistics, change can be very difficult, can be very anxious making. And I believe that in learning, we have a real opportunity to help people grapple with those changes and really address them positively. So in order to kind of create that behavior change, to start those conversations, I don't think we need to boil the ocean. You know, a conversation can be a very simple thing between two people or more than two people. And we can break that climate silence by asking questions and by listening. And that's really important, that listening piece. Even if someone doesn't agree with you, is skeptical about climate change, or has a different view about how it's going to affect us going forward. That can really open the door to more and bigger and more powerful conversations. So you can ask about people's thoughts, their perspective. It makes a huge and scary topic much more personal, much more manageable. It contextualizes, it helps them to really understand how it affects them in their day-to-day life and what they can do about that. So it creates this kind of feeling of agency, and that creates trust. And they talked a bit about trust this morning as well and how important that was for psychological safety. So that's something that in learning I think we're actually really good at doing, at being able to help people do that and help them feel like their opinion is valued and necessary and wanted. So if you're going to start a climate conversation, you might start with, what are your views on climate change? Or what do you think in X corporation we could be doing to address climate change? Or if you're a Brit like me, you might start with the weather, like, God, wasn't it hot last summer? How did you cope with that? Because we had some days here that were like boiling hot. So the object of these small conversations is not to convince people of anything. It's to listen to them, to let them have the opportunity to speak to you, to make them feel heard. If you do have something that you need to impart, ask them about their perspective first, then impart the information, and then ask them what they think of what you said. And that is a really powerful way to engage them in this very difficult topic. So for many years, millennia, probably as long as we've been able to have language, or even through cave paintings and things like that, humans have been using storytelling as a way to impart information. And that's a really good way to use it in your climate conversations as well. This guy here, he's a professor of literature, and he says, a story does what facts and statistics never can. It inspires and motivates the audience, tunes in, because they see themselves woven into that story. So I have a story that I like to use to illustrate the loss of biodiversity, which is a weird story to have maybe, but when I was a young girl, I used to run past my neighbour's buddleia bush, and I would sweep my hand across it, and clouds of red admiral butterflies would fly off the bush, and they'd be all flying around your head. And a couple of years ago, I sat in my own garden as an adult, some years later, and I did the big butterfly count, and I literally counted 2 butterflies, and actually I think it was the same one doing rounds, so it's probably 1 butterfly. But that showed me very starkly the difference between the level of biodiversity we had 40 years ago and what we've got now. You also see on, if you ever had a look at WaterAids, the charity WaterAids website, they have a lot of climate stories, video climate stories on there, about how people are being impacted by climate change, but also how they are addressing it and how they are adapting to it. And I think that's a really important piece as well. Again, to do with agency, that we need to feel like we can do something about it. So storytelling is really great. You all know this, but you know, it's engaging. It shows your mission and vision in action. It can humanize things. It can take a difficult subject and really relate it, contextualize it, make it relevant. And it can inspire people to really want to know more about the subject as well. So, we'd like you to spend a little bit of time now. Talk on your tables. There aren't any tables, so we'll have to improvise. We'd like you to tell each other your story about addressing the challenges of climate change, ideally through learning in your organisation. But if you're not doing any learning, then it can be how your organisation is addressing climate change itself, or if you're an individual and you're not with a company, then what you're doing or what you've heard about people doing. And we'd like you just to spend some time sharing that with each other.
Yeah, so a good example of this is the very first sustainable L&D session that we did, which was the lunchtime session that Tess mentioned with those 15 people there. And there was a gentleman there at the back who had a tech company that were based out of San Francisco. They did a lot of AI computations, and they were aiming for 0 carbon. So they had solar panels on the top of their roof to power the building, and they changed their working practices. So they did the power-hungry AI computations when the sun was at its zenith, so that they could remain carbon neutral. And it's like, wow, that's a really good idea. And we have told God knows how many people about this, because it was like a really inspiring thing. Nothing to do with us. We didn't do it. It's just like bloke said down the pub. Isn't that amazing? You know. So if you're not able to kind of tell a story about what you're doing within learning within your organisation, if there are inspiring stories that you've heard that you can pass on, we want you to discuss with those around you what those are. So probably form into groups of maybe 4 or something like that. And then we want to hear those stories back. So we kind of build up a bank of, oh, lady said down the pub, you know, this amazing person told this incredible story. And this kind of snowballs. These are great conversation starters. So I think we'll give you probably about 5-7 minutes to discuss. Then we're going to come around each of the groups and hear your best story from you. So off you go.
You might need to move around a little bit if you're not with people that you don't already know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to come round and start harvesting stories. So I'm not going to start at the front. I'm going to start at the back. Can't stop them now, can I? We're just going to go on and on. You have to do a ting. We don't have pens anymore to think it.
Well,
I'm so sorry to stop you all in full flow. But from a completely selfish point of view, we want to harvest all these stories, like for all of us to share and to you. So I think I'll come to this group at the back. So what story would you like to share with the group?
I could share what I was saying, yeah. So, hi, my name is Mike. I work for a company called Springer Nature, which is one of the largest scientific publishing companies in the world. So, we have, as an institution, programs in place to subsidize and spread research about climate science, and all of the SDGs, in fact, but sustainability in general, through universities, libraries, governments, etc. And so looking outward, that's where we potentially have the biggest impact. But then the question that I personally am dealing with now as a instructional designer working internally is how to connect the employee population with the larger goal that we have as a company. So so I'm looking specifically at engaging employees, at the individual level, within the larger corporate vision and goal of carbon neutrality, basically, and then trying to pull that through into our entire value chain. So since we're a publisher, we're using trees, we're using paper, et cetera, but to create the story about what we do and connect the vision of what we're doing as a company to the employee, this is a major component of engagement actually for employees, to feel like we do have a purpose, we do have a mission, we are doing something as a company, but then also create the story about how individual, the decision making that individuals within the company make, how that connects into that larger corporate vision.
Shameless plug for the session that I'm chairing tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was asked to step in at the last minute to chair it. It's specifically about company purpose and how you connect employees to purpose. And there are two speakers. One's doing a bottom-up approach, the other is doing a top-down approach. So that might help you in that mission of kind of connecting your employees to the goals and the purpose that you have. So thank you very much. Cheers. So who else heard an amazing story? Might be yours or might be one from the group that you are. Oh, let me just, everybody's pointing at you.
Hi, so I'm from Change by Degrees. It's a sustainability business based in Ireland, and we do e-learning for companies, but we write strategies as well. And I was working with the huge finance company in Ireland that had just moved into a platinum LEED building, and they were working hard on their scope 3 to get people out of cars and onto bikes to make it to the office. And they had the most beautiful low-flow shower rooms, drying rooms, bike parking area, you name it, and none of the women were using it. And we couldn't figure out why, or they hadn't asked the right question why. So as we dug deep, we realised that the hair dryers were crap. Right? So they changed the hair dryers, and saw a massive impact in their climate action targets because everyone got back on their bikes. Because they needed to look well because they were having really important, serious meetings. Yeah. And they wouldn't cycle in the rain in Ireland and take that risk.
Yeah, that relates right back to being human-centred about the issue and about the things that you're designing around it. Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. I think everybody's pointing at you now.
Hi, my name's Fiona McNeil. I'm from Solve Together, who use human-centred design methods to solve learning problems. And I was talking about a designer I know of called Jerry McGovern, who he is looking at every stage of product development and thinking about how we can do things more sustainably. And in my last role, something I was talking about often was the little decisions we can make about how we run meetings and the impact that can have. So if we design meetings better and have fewer meetings, then there's less likelihood of recording that meeting because I'm not able to stay for the whole thing, or recording that meeting because I'll check it later. We find the stats of those recordings are extremely low. People never have time to go and watch that recording later. And the impact of storing all of that video on servers across the space of a year amounts to about 11 miles of carbon, I think, based on McGovern's figures. So when we think about all of that mounting up across a business, that's huge. So let's think about how we run meetings, whether we record them, and are there better ways of passing on information and designing meetings better?
Yeah, I think everybody would like fewer meetings, wouldn't they? I think you're onto something there. And I'm conscious I've been ignoring this side of the room. Who heard an amazing story from this side? Somebody must have said a decent story. Here we are.
So we were talking, I mean, it's interesting about small conversations. We talk about small wins. Hello? We talk about small wins, and sorry. Ava was discussing how she's managed to remove plastic folders from her company, and that's kind of a small win in terms of, this is something which we've got rid of. I just described, we're exhibiting at the exhibition this year. We're giving away jelly beans in bags, and we went out of our way to source biodegradable bags. Yeah. But you look at them on the stand, they just look like plastic bags. And one of our concerns is, like, the cardboard bit at the top has got a recyclable icon on it, so it's recyclable. The plastic bags just look like single-use plastic bags. Yeah. Someone was like, we have to put a big sign up to say these are biodegradable, we are not killing the planet. Yeah. So there's something about small wins, but there's something also about signposting those wins as to why we're doing that and what the benefits are. Yeah. Well, good for you for going that extra mile. So wonderful, thank you. I think just in the interest of time, we're going to have to hand back over.
Sure. Okay, so I wanted to finish on a story that I particularly like. This is from a lady called Wangari Maathai. She was a social, political, and environmental activist in Kenya. She unfortunately died about 12 years ago, so this does look a little dated, but I still really like the sentiment, and I think it's something that we can really kind of hang on to. She was also the first black African lady to win the Nobel Peace Prize as well. So hopefully this will play. Oh.
But you just click forward there.
I did, and it did itself.
Yeah, just leave.
I've got no sound.
No, the sound starts in a minute. No, it doesn't.
I've got no sound.
You put the subtitles on.
Yeah.
He said unplug. Plug it back in. Funny thing over breakfast, sat having breakfast with a work colleague, she said everybody's worried about AI taking our jobs. It's really hard to play a video at a learning tech conference. I think we'd be safe for a while. Thought that was really insightful.
Okay, let's have another go. Nope.
I think it's just going to be subtitles.
Yeah, it's just going to be subtitles. Can you all see those? So I hope you could all read that. She was basically saying that the little hummingbird can only take a drop of water at a time to put out the fire, but at least they're doing something. And we should all be like that little hummingbird, which I think is a really good thing to hold on to. Okay. Oh. So now it's not going to let me go on to the last slide. Yeah. Either, bear with me a second. It was going so well.
Yeah, we only tested it like 15 times.
Okay. So this is our Green L&D group, which is on LinkedIn. If you would like to join in the conversation on there, that would be awesome. And you can just do the QR code. I'll need to just approve you all, so it might take me a little while, but you'll be on there by the end of the day. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being interested. Thank you for being part of the solution.
Okay, we're going to push the boundary now. There's another video in this presentation, which it might be worth just testing. A bit of food. A bit of food. You get sound now. It's not the sound you want, is it? So I hope Tessa's presentation has given you some ideas of how we can use the power of small conversations to prepare that soil for those seeds to germinate. And now Brittany's going to talk to us about the seeds that she's sown at Kraft Heinz.
Right. Thank you for everyone's attention so far. It's wonderful to see such an engaged group come together and talk about the subject. My name is Brittany. I am a sustainability professional working with the Kraft Heinz company. I am Canadian by nationality. I've been with the company in Amsterdam and their supply chain global headquarters since 2020, so January of 2020, coming up on 3.5 years now. I joined the company with the mandate of creating a grassroots program around the challenge of previous ambitions or commitments that the company had made that we were on track to not meet. And so there was a clear recognition from the leadership team that you can't just set a public commitment and then expect everybody to mobilize and move in the right direction, but that you really have to structure your program around business strategies, and you have to get the frameworks, the tools, processes, teams, capabilities, and expertise in place in order to be successful in driving the impact where you want it to be. So I signed on to the mandate of doing that within the procurement space. So Kraft Heinz is a global company with 26 billion in revenue. We have about 15 billion in spend annually, coming from 25,000 tier 1 suppliers. So that's my playground. And the goal is to take everything that sits in our ESG report or anything that matters to our shareholders, stakeholders, consumers, customers, and bring it to life through actionable programs. My team is a very small but dedicated team that really focuses on being experts within the space and enabling action throughout the functions. So we have a function of 400 procurement professionals globally from countries in like Egypt, Indonesia, the United States, here in London actually. We've got a team in Amsterdam, so they're quite distributed. And they look to the 5 of us on my team, and growing, to essentially give them the direction on what they're expected to do in order to meet our goals, how they're expected to do it, who to do it with, and when the right time or when the right place is to drive that momentum. And so today what I'll do is share a little bit of the learning side of that journey, which is the procurement professional of the past is not the procurement professional of the future. And so what are we doing to bridge that gap, and what has that partnership looked like with hybrid roles like myself, where I am not a procurement professional, but I am an implant within a function with a clear focus on sustainability and innovation, and other functions like L&D within Kraft Heinz. So we do have a very strong team, and what does that partnership look like, and how has it come to life? So the first part that I'll try to do is answer the question of what is a procurement, sustainability, and innovation program. What you'll see here on the screen are a collection of internal programs. So I mentioned we turn ambition into action. These are the programs that effectively allow us to do that. Around the inner circle, you'll see the areas that we are responsible to own, lead, and really kind of drive that change within the business. So animal welfare, supplier-enabled innovation, responsible sourcing, so that would include anything environmental or social throughout the entire value chain, supplier diversity, climate action, sustainable agriculture, much more leaning towards regenerative agriculture. And on the outer circle, what you see are areas that we act as a strategic partner to others that may be taking a little bit more of a leadership role. And so sustainable manufacturing, so net zero decarbonized factories, for example. Community support, so this is much more on the philanthropic side. So we play in the meal donation and fighting hunger space. And then you have nutrition and packaging on the right-hand side, which is our technology space. So where are we going to unlock the new stevia or the new ingredients of the future that can really make that step change in making healthy food sustainable but also more accessible at large? And packaging, this is all about technology. So how do we take the convenience that we've learned to love and then make it more sustainable for the future? And so these activities typically fall across a spectrum. And so I wouldn't take this slide too literally in terms of the sequence, but really the idea here is to say we've got two levers. On one hand, on the left-hand side, we have the lever of procuring services and goods in a way that drives sustainability objectives. So this would be your more traditional way of looking at sustainable procurement. What you can see falling into here would be procurement policies, for example, supplier policies. We have a supplier guiding principles that outlines our expectations and our requirements. So that's more on the left-hand side, specifications. On the right-hand side, the other lever, what you're seeing, and this is really the emerging space, and we saw it come out in the keynote address this morning, is leveraging supplier networks, so designing, catalyzing, mobilizing, managing, or being a part of networks that are centered around problems that we all agree are worth solving. And so you can see kind of supplier-enabled innovation really on the far end of that spectrum. But again, there's pieces here that are constantly playing together. So I think the key takeaway here is that that's a lot. It's a lot for an expert. It's a lot for a dedicated team of people that are SMEs in that space. And it's certainly a lot for the 400 procurement professionals that are expected to be the interface between these programs, 25,000 suppliers, and all of our commercial teams, our R&D teams, our L&D teams, et cetera, throughout the business. So how do we measure where we stand in that journey? Because I mentioned the past is not the future, and so are we further along? Are we earlier along in that journey? This is where our capabilities model comes into play. So it's a self-reporting mechanism that's run by our procurement excellence team, and it essentially takes strategize, innovate, and control as the three areas that we want to understand where our teams are today. And then within innovate, you have sustainable procurement and innovation and supplier-enabled innovation as two areas that we are trying to measure where people, and again, self-reported, so it's between a direct report and their manager, believe that they stand against the definition of what the expectations are. So we use this as a way to drive investment within the business, as a way to highlight areas where change needs to happen and where we need to have structured programs in the learning space. And so what you'll see, and this slide looks very negative, but for me it was very positive because this is how we were able to bring a lot of ideas to life. The writing is too small, but the key takeaway here is on the left-hand yellow box, so 24% of our global population, and this is actually over 2 years as well, we're seeing similar numbers, believes that they are meeting expectations or that they are set up for success from a capabilities perspective to drive sustainable procurement. Even lower, 16% of them believe that they are set up for success and that they have the capabilities required in order to drive supplier-enabled innovation. One thing to note is we don't separate innovation and sustainability. We actually keep them together within the same space because there's so much overlap, and also the capabilities are very, very similar. So why do they feel this way? And this connects to some of the themes that we saw come up on how do you feel about climate change. There's a lot of anxiety. I think that's one. There's a lot of feeling of responsibility without quite knowing what you can do about that. And so this is the context that our employees have been exposed to, where they're essentially seeing a huge increase in business needs coming from different areas, on what they're expected to support on the sustainability and innovation space. There are 3 key buckets that I'm going to call out here, but there are many, many more than this. So legislation and regulation, huge. So we've got carbon tax, cross-border adjustments coming into play. We've got human rights legislation. In France, we have a duty of vigilance legislation. In the UK, we have the modern slavery statement. In California, we have different regulations. In Australia, we've got different regulations. And these are global teams that are trying to keep up with ever-changing supply markets that have also been under pressure from things like COVID or supply chain disruption or climate change. So yields decreasing, for example. You need to move around, but then you have to move around your supply chain considering all of these new areas that people have a low confidence operating within. The second is stakeholder expectations. We touched about this a little bit. It's really no secret at this point that this is a board level discussion with large companies, and our shareholders, all of our stakeholders, really do expect that we're raising the bar. And the third area is supply chain ESG risk and resilience. I mentioned yield failures. So we are a tomato, largest tomato buyer in the world. So ketchup is one of our main products, but also you wouldn't think like beans. So we're the largest navy bean buyer in the world. There's also tomatoes within that sauce. So tomatoes and beans, if we just use that as a use case, those are very volatile crops when it comes to climate fluctuations. And they need to grow in hot areas, but they also need water. And what are we seeing in the world is you're seeing extreme temperature peaks, but then you're also seeing huge dips in terms of rainfall. And so we're having to solve these types of problems in new contexts and under increasing pressure year over year as the biggest player in the world. And again, these are not sustainability experts solving these problems. These are procurement experts, people that have been taught to be trained negotiators over the past few decades. And so what we're really trying to do is, one, understand exactly what skills we expect them to have decentrally, and make sure that they have centralized expertise to support them beyond that point. And we're really trying to build programs and a strategy that gets us from where we are today, so the beginning, you saw the 24 and the 16%, to the future. And it has been a process of discovery. So what did we do? We started off in the beginning, really I would say by a needs-based approach. So we had a need to socialize a new policy, or we had a need to get people to understand supplier diversity. And so we started an early partnership with Sponge. I'd encourage, I see the team in the back here, and they've also got a stand down in the exhibit hall. If you want to see these programs, I believe they're on display, so you're welcome to go down and ask to see the supplier guiding principles, for example. We developed a little bit of gamification around that one. Those are interesting kind of new ways of thinking about sustainability learning for us back in 2021. 2022, we brought forward supplier diversity and ESG 101, so really trying to raise the bar in terms of here's the minimum requirement in your learning. All of these were in the e-learning space, and what we realized is, okay, we need to take it one step further. We need to not just be putting Band-Aids on pain points, but we really need to bring together a holistic strategy. And so that brings us to where we are today. When we looked at our priorities for 2023, our second priority, so that's globally for all of the programs that you saw, is upskilling procurement capability. So it's really important to position learning not as a side piece and not as a siloed program, but really as a key enabler in order to achieve everything else. And so that's what we did. Within this space, what we did is we essentially on the right-hand side of the screen have our global program where we're essentially, this is broad reach, trying to raise awareness and trying to raise, I would say, the bar in terms of what standard practice looks like. So it's not best practice quite yet, but it's increasing the standard across the board. On the left-hand side of the screen, what you'll see is the Procurement Sustainability Masters and the Kraft Heinz Agronomy Masters. These are focused, high investment programs in key talent that we believe can lead the future. One of the things that we've learned is a lot of people learn by seeing something that looks good and then mimicking and then testing, doing that rapid iteration, and then they develop their own style, they build their confidence, and they go out and they make their own ideas come to life. We didn't have enough of those examples within the organization for people to look to, learn from, copy, mimic, and so we're trying to create them. And so that's this left-hand side. For those who can't see, right hand, we have procurement sustainability fundamentals, so that would be like a function-wide net zero training, for example. On the bottom right, we have leading sustainably, so I have a quick slide on that one. So that's getting our leaders, so our key decision makers globally, hands-on experience so that they live and breathe the mission, but that they also are basing it on experience and having actually seen the problems and the challenges. And then we'll get to the left too. So in the leading sustainable section, this is much less leaning on technology and much more leaning towards networks. And so this is an example of a recent trip that we did in March of this year to Uberlândia in Brazil, which is one of the largest soy regions in the world. We went specifically during the largest soy harvest period in the world, and the goal here was to see the end-to-end value chain from farm all the way to processing, and really understand what are the constraints, what are the challenges around social, so migrant workers, ethical trade, for example, all the way to the environmental piece around deforestation, which was one of the key themes that we looked at. And in the picture here, what you see is a beautiful range of people from the local leadership, the local buyers, so the LATAM office, as well as our chief procurement officer globally, and the global leadership and the global category leads all together, engaging with the growers in the fields and having direct conversations without any filter. So now we get to the fun stuff, which is on the left-hand side. So this is that focused training, that focused creating examples of what good looks like within the organization. And so we have the Procurement Sustainability Masters Program. This is our flagship program on bringing sustainability to life within the organization. So I've been with the company for 3 years, and we've made a huge amount of progress, but we're recognizing that what we've done until now is not going to get us to where we want to go going forward. So what got you here will get you there, the old saying. That's where we're standing today. And so when we look at the development of this program, really what we're trying to do is when you have your maturity scale and you have your time scale, we centralized very, very, very quickly in terms of building this almost center of excellence on sustainability. But we're maturing as a company, we're centralizing. The goal now is to decentralize and start to enable local action. And so this, I would say, is that first step in that decentralization process. And hopefully this works.
What is Procurement Sustainability Masters? It's a flagship program to infuse sustainability into our function. It aims to produce certified leading performers in sustainable procurement. It results in environmental and social responsibility within our teams. It's a program that will develop confidence in putting theory into practice. It's a springboard for innovative and impactful projects. Congratulations on being selected to join this program. Now that we've launched, you can expect exciting and engaging activities that will shape you into a master of sustainable procurement. It starts with a cohort-wide kick-off event and an introduction to your sustainability pod. You'll take part in activities that will prepare you with all the knowledge you'll need to begin the program before moving on to the core learning section. This year, our core modules are Net Zero, Responsible Sourcing, and Sustainable Supplier Collaboration, which will provide you with all the theoretical knowledge needed for sustainable procurement mastery. But this program is so much more than theory. It's about experimentation and inspiration. It's about practice too. We'll give you the opportunity to experience the learning material firsthand during the Sustainability Experience Week. And that's not all. Working as a group, your cohort will have the opportunity to work on an impact project, one which could very well decide the future of our sustainable procurement practices. In other words, to truly make a difference. Lastly, you'll have a graduation event to celebrate your hard work throughout the program. Meet your fellow masters. We have so much more in store for you and can't wait to get started. Good luck to each of you on this journey, and we look forward to seeing your amazing ideas.
All right, so hopefully that gave a little bit more of a practical touch to the concept and the theories and the thinking and the strategy that I just shared. You'll notice at the end it's a bunch of pictures of stock images. This will be where we put the faces of our 15 first cohort members. So the nomination process has closed. We are very excited to, so we have 400 procurement professionals globally. We had more than 100 employees attend optional and voluntary information sessions. Usually when we do these, even on the topic of sustainability, we get maybe 15 per time zone for a total of maybe 40. So to get a quarter of the population interested, and the interest would have to be either from a manager wanting to nominate their direct report or from somebody who wants to bring this to the manager as an opportunity for them to grow. We had 1/4 of the population on our first cohort. Within that, we're just finally getting approval on the final 15. So our global leadership team is, they run the panel, the selection panel, so we've enabled them to make decisions in the spirit of the intention of the program. And what we're really trying to do is make sure that representation across the footprint, so both sub-functions, so procurement finance, for example, procurement agronomy, buyers, value creation, so design to value work, for example, all of them are included and represented, but also from a geography perspective. So we have 56 applicants. It worked out quite well that we have that good representation. So we have 24 countries that are represented within that cross-section, and we have 13 different sub-functions, and it's definitely been quite a difficult conversation. A lot of pressure to bump 15 to 20 actually is what we're managing now, but the interest and the response from the business has been huge. One thing that I will share on the program is that the structure. So how do we bring it to life? So you saw that we have different modules. I guess I want to shed a little bit of light on the how. So we are doing a blended learning approach. So we're working with Sponge to essentially help us bring best practice forward and operating in a hybrid environment where we have different time zones, and we also have different time pressures on the team. So budgeting season for procurement professionals and no touch period, for example. And so we've built out an agenda across all of the learning where it's essentially spaced. It's approximately 5 to 6 hours of learning per month, virtually for, I would say, about half of it. We have 2 full-day sessions, and then we have 1 full-week in-person session where we're flying from a centralized budget, everyone together to get, and the idea behind the Experience Week is 1 day with a supplier where you see a program live and you get to ask those questions, 1 day with the university where we're developing a 1-day kind of intensive program. The 3rd day would be with one of our NGO partners to go and see the work that we're doing and how that collaboration comes to life. A 4th day where we want them to go and see a completely different industry and see what they're doing and share those lessons. And then a 5th day where they come together for a facilitated workshop to come up with the cohort project, which would essentially be what they would present to the leadership team at the end as a way to bring the program to life. So think about your university gifts, your class gifts, where people would build a gazebo or a statue. This is our version of this is, okay, well, out of everything you've learned, where do you see an opportunity to take immediate action? And we're trying to unlock kind of quick investment on that and give them direct access to the CEO of the company so that that idea can be brought to life. So it really is an end-to-end process. The idea is kick off in May, end in October, November, and keep that community alive after as a springboard community for us to use in order to bring the rest of the function to a higher degree going forward. So we'll be cohort building on cohort, and we are expecting a little bit of that mentorship component between the years as well. But we're very excited. 2 of the key themes that we saw come up so far in the day-to-day that connect quite, I would say, intimately to the spirit in which we're operating is storytelling and identity, and then technology and experience. And I think this is where if I was a learning and development expert, I would really be taking these and saying, okay, for every sustainability initiative where I'm trying to partner with a function or with an expert to bring a story to life, how are we using identity and storytelling? So in this case, we've assigned an identity that you are a master. And then there are expectations with that, but we're giving them the tools. Storytelling, Brazil is a great example. We're bringing that to life and we're trying to spread that across the function. And then finally, technology and experience. We know that experiential learning is correlated with higher quality of investment from the business, more engaging, tends to command attention. But it's also very expensive, and so how can we create this blended environment where we're able to do a lot more without compromising on the experience piece? And we see that that is the role that technology can play and will play for us going forward. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
That's wonderful, Brittany. Thank you so much for that. We're kind of bang up to time, but I just wanted to point out, Tess mentioned the power that commercial organisations have because they can move more quickly than governments, and they have more power than we do as individuals. And Brittany mentioned a couple of statistics at the start quite quickly. I just want to reinforce those to you. They work with 25,000 tier 1 suppliers with whom they spend 14 point something billion?
Yeah, close to 15.
Close to 15 billion. So these were the seeds of change that have been planted to influence at that scale. And I think that's kind of really humbling. The other thing that I thought was really inspiring is it's a business imperative. They have to do this because of the cost of the materials needed to make the produce. And I think we'll see that across so many different industries. So we're right up to time now, and everybody's interested in lunch, but we'll be here for a bit and wandering down for lunch. So if you have questions, I suggest come up and have a chat. And if you want to head off to grab your lunch, then do that by all means. But thank you again for coming, and a big thank you to our both brilliant speakers.